Is Wolfenstein The New Order this year's most surprising shooter? I'm Matt Elliott from StevieG, and that's the question I'll be asking GamesMaster's Matt Gilman as we return to Castle Wolfenstein.
Shooting, stabbing, strangling Nazis.
Hello Matt, how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good.
Good, so let's get straight in there because I'm quite excited about this. So I think everyone's vaguely aware of what they thought this might have been, and we were kind of sold this idea of castles, of big sort of dual-wielding shotguns and blowing things up and quips. But it sounds like there's a lot more to it than that. Can you tell us a bit about it?
There is a hell of a lot more to it than that. I think that if Wolfenstein The New Order had just been that, then it still would have been good fun and we would all have been quite happy. But Machine Games developer has clearly gone above and beyond to make sure that this is something incredibly special with the way they've told the story in the game.
So, I mean, the story is a key thing that you mentioned in the review, and it sounds like more of a kind of an emotional journey than the thing anyone was expecting. What sort of stuff can you expect? So if you kind of give us a bit of backstory about just the basics about what it's about.
Sure. You are BJ Blazkowicz, the hero from Wolfenstein's past. At the start of the game, it's 1946. It is the tail end of the Second World War. It's not going quite so well in the New Order's world. The Nazis are winning, and essentially a raid gone wrong on a castle puts Blazko into a 14-year-long catatonic state. He wakes up in the 1960s, and this is a totally different. It's an alternate history. The Nazis have won. I mentioned in the review. English is a dead language, you know. It's very atmospheric, very grim world that he wakes up in. And his mission, I guess, at the start is to meet up with the remaining resistance members and fight back against oppression. But it's much wider than that. I mean, the thing that makes the story work so well is that these characters aren't just quip machines. They're not there just to look cool, even though they do look cool. They are really well defined. They are characterized with flaws and with little affectations that are really easy to endear them to you, and you don't want bad things to happen to these people, and inevitably this is hardly a spoiler. I mean, it's a game about Nazis and killing things. It all goes horribly wrong, and it's heart-wrenching at times.
That sort of opening, the kind of sequence that we may have seen already, the kind of wake-up sequence, there's some stuff in that is really sort of unflinching and quite shocking, isn't it?
The soundtrack's amazing as well, isn't it? It's like this undertone of music and the kind of... This is the other thing that surprised me about it, is because if you just take the dialogue, just take the lines, and just look at what the people are actually saying, it sounds like it should be stock. It should be like this kind of cheesy, kind of over-egged, action piece. But it's not, because it's so well delivered, and because you know these characters by then, you're really invested in them as well. So yeah, all the moments like that are really powerful. Some of the moments are just so intense as well. This is at its height, it's a corridor shooter, right? You're running down corridors and gunning down Nazis, but there are moments when the game will drag you up and force you to slow down and look at what's happening and drink in these atmospheres. And there are some really horrible places that you go to. There's one particular scene on a train, which I'm not going to spoil beyond saying it's on a train and saying it's not a train level. This is a first-person shooter. It has a train level, but it's not what you expect at all. And it's brilliantly written. It's like the best kind of Tarantino writing that just has this tension just steadily rise throughout and then just explode in the way you would not expect. And it's a very special game.
It sounds incredible. I mean, so the emotional stuff aside, which for me I think is the big selling point now, but how does it handle as a shooter? Because I played it and I found it like immediately engaging, completely crazy. But does it work as a shooter on its own? It
does. It's not heavy. It's not a heavy shooter. People always talk about shooters feel good if they have heft, or you can feel the weight of the weapons. It's not like that. It's a much lighter shooter. It's much more about running and stuff. But the way perks work in the game inspire you to try new things. It's very easy to play through the whole game, blazing through corridors and shooting everything, until you get to the stealth sections, which actually work really well, but we'll get into that. There are perks which unlock depending on how you play. So, for example, if you manage to gun down 3 enemies with 1 Prigatress whilst dual wielding, you'll earn a new perk, and that'll unlock a new skill. But you unless you look that up and start actually actively involving yourself in new ways to play the game, you might not discover that. It's up to you to kind of play around with the things at your disposal to find new ways to play through. I mean, at its heart, like I say, it's a corridor shooter. You are in a bunch of corridors with a bunch of weapons and a bunch of bad guys, but it's all the stuff around it that makes it more than that. In fact, I think there's one moment in the game which I personally felt that illusion was broken, and I remember that I was playing a corridor shooter. Again, no spoilers, don't want to ruin anything, but for huge portions, you forget that you're in a corridor, and that's the beauty of it, right? It's quite a simple mechanic. It's obviously they've masterfully kind of implemented it, but you're in a corridor, and it doesn't feel like a corridor. It feels like this pathway to greatness.
That's a box quote for you, right?
There you go.
So, I mean, this was a question I was going to come on to later in terms of it being a corridor shooter. The bits that I've seen of it and the bits I've played, it felt kind of a bit more complex. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen that map that compares like Doom to Call of Duty, and Call of Duty is like a straight line.
Right.
But this doesn't feel like a straight line. Is that true or not?
It's true. It's not a straight line. So there is a choice you make towards the start of the game. No spoilers. It's really hard to avoid spoilers in this review. There is a choice that you make which defines how you approach certain aspects of levels. You can get either a hot wiring skill, which will allow you to open saved caches and things like that, or you'll get a lockpicking skill, and these essentially unlock new paths through levels that you will have played through before. It's kind of imbuing it with replayability as well, but there are multiple paths at certain times. They don't affect necessarily how you go about playing the game. You will still do the same things regardless of which path you go. It's not like you're missing out on chunks of story, but there's enough there to pepper your playthrough with enough individual moments of crazy gunplay or epic stealth from someone else's, for example.
Awesome. I mean, that's maybe something that we'll come on to now as well, because this is like a kind of a rigidly, honestly single-player game, isn't it?
Yes.
And is that a good thing, do you think, or is it going to suffer in people's eyes because of the lack of multiplayer?
I think it all depends. Why do you play a first-person shooter? I think if you jump into a first-person shooter because you want to elbow your mate in the ribs and say, "Hey, look at what I'm doing," then move on to the next Call of Duty or the Battlefield. I mean, if you are playing this first-person shooter because you want to be invested in this world, this is the thing. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a shooter. It's just a fantastic world that you want to see and be a part of. I think if that's enough for you, and it should be because it's awesome, then play this game and enjoy it. And it does annoy me a little bit when people complain about there not being multiplayer, because if you allow yourself to be dragged into this experience, then there's very little to complain about, to be honest.
Let the new order in.
That's it. That's what I'm saying. Yes.
So we'll finish up then with the question I started with. So do you think this is this the most surprising shooter you've played this year?
It is, yes. I think, like I said at the start, I mean, it could have been completely average. It could have got away with being anything it's been before, and not that it was average before the series, but it could have got away with just giving us more of what we know. The fact that it goes out of its way, and so far out of its way, to provide us with so much more, makes it an incredibly surprising and welcome surprise as well.
Fantastic stuff. It's nice to be pleasantly surprised by a game.
Yeah.
So let us know what you think about that, and if you enjoyed this video, please click like and subscribe for more stuff like this in the future, and thank you very much for watching. Thanks, Matt.
No worries.